Hi everyone, and welcome to One Autistic Person. This video that I'm doing today, as people who have watched my channel for a while may have noticed, I haven't actually posted a video for the last week. I went through a lot of sort of imposter syndrome situation going on, and I was asking myself why. And obviously there's the whole late diagnosis situation, that when you're late diagnosed, you ask yourself the question of, is this the right thing? And for some reason, I keep going back to it, and I keep coming back to the same answer, that yes, it is. I am autistic, but it just feels like I'm sometimes told by people that I'm not the kind of autistic that people expect me to be. And it really got me asking the question about infantilising autism. And the reason why I've come to that conclusion is I've had a few people say recently things like, my 8-year-old nephew is autistic, and you're nothing like him. And I don't have a response for it, or I didn't have a response. I now do, because the answer to it is good. I'm not 8 years old. Neither do I want to act like an 8-year-old, whether that person is autistic or they're holistic, that they are neurodivergent or they are neurotypical. It doesn't matter. I don't want to act like an 8-year-old, and neither should I be. And then the other thing that gets said a lot, and this isn't really around infantilisation, but I suppose it is to an extent, where you're sort of saying all people should act in a certain way. And it's when people say, well, you're not like my autistic friend, and then they say that they're 35 or whatever, which is close to my age. Again, good. I'm an individual human being. I experience the world based on nature that I experienced. So for me, that is being somebody who was born autistic, and then nurture my upbringing and life experiences. And I am more than just my autism diagnosis. Yes, I do talk a lot about it on YouTube, and I talk about it a lot in my life. It's something that I am extremely interested in, something that I'm fascinated by. I did a lot of research on to get to the conclusion of I need to go for an autism diagnosis, and it's now probably my biggest special interest that I have. I hyper focus on researching it, and then I want to share that with the world. So yes, I may be doing things that look like my whole life is about autism, and it isn't. But my whole life is experiencing autism, and therefore, because I'm interested in it, and because I'm also experiencing it at the same time, I've got a hyper focus on it at the same time as being interested in it. But I really wanted to look more deeply into kind of how bad it is to turn around and say to somebody, my 8-year-old nephew is autistic and you're not like him. And I want to look at it from a few different angles. And with videos that I do, and when I'm talking about things, when I'm researching things and thinking about things, I really go into a lot of detail in my mind about it. So I've broken this into a few different sections. And so I'm first of all going to really sort of hyper focus on that my 8-year-old nephew is autistic comment, because it's one that I had very recently. And I'm going to look at it from two different angles. I'm going to look at it from an angle of why it is wrong to think that in general, but then also why, if that is the case, that you're actually making it so that you're basically absolving any autistic person of any responsibility, and at the same time as being hugely offensive to that person. And I don't think any autistic adult wants to be absolved of responsibility for things, and wouldn't want to be put in the same situation as people who are 8 years old. And I'm going to look at it from school, and I'm going to look at it from the legal system. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I think that shows why it's such a stupid thing to say. And I'm actually going to look at it from 10 years old and above. I'm not even going to go to 8 years old. So it would be it's even worse saying it when you're saying an 8-year-old. So I'm going to look at it from, like I say, from a school perspective, and then from a legal perspective, and why when it's said, it's so stupid, and why from a societal basis we don't look at anything else like this. So why do we look at autism specifically, but generally people who are disabled, who have a disability, that we infantilise them to the point of saying things like that? So I'm going to have a look first from the perspective of school. So when I'm looking at school, I'm going to sort of generalise ages in this into sort of breaking it down to 1 or 2 years at each age that I'm going to talk about. But if we were looking at somebody at the age of 10, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to look at anything younger than 10, and that will become apparent when I go through the legal side of things, in the UK at least anyway. I'm not sure what it is in other countries, but from the legal side, 10 is an important number. It's an important age to consider when things change for people. And I think that is replicated in the school system. So, and I think that the way schools work are relatively similar across most countries. Most education systems kind of look at things in very similar ways. And I know the grading system's kind of similar in America. So, and I think that we just kind of tend to follow this line. So the age between 10 and 11 is is sort of the last year of primary school. So you go to secondary school when you're 11. So you're 10, 11 years old, and it's your last year in primary school. You do a lot of work preparing you to go into a new situation that is not like what you've been like in primary school. You'll have different teachers. You'll have times to keep. You'll have routines and schedules that you need to be put in place, and that are put in place for you, and that you have to follow. Rules change and are stricter. There's more accountability put onto you, but there are still those protections at that age. So that's 2 to 3 years after this insulting thing of saying my 8-year-old nephew. And by this, I'm not saying it's insulting to be an 8-year-old. It's being insulting to be expected to act like somebody who's 8 years old. And I'm trying to put it in perspective. So then 12 to 13 is sort of year 7 and year 8, which are the first 2 years, which is kind of preparing you ready to start studying your GCSEs. But you are given a lot of allowance of those first few years that you're in secondary school. You are given a lot more leeway. You aren't, if you are late to things, you'll get told off for it, but there isn't a lot of responsibility on it. And if you play up, they'll spend more time working with you. And that's when you're sort of getting to know what it's like to be expected to do things. But at the end of that, at 13, you're then being tested to look at where you sit within the GCSE scale. Now, I have major issues around the way that we do education. So this is the way it is, regardless. Whether I agree or disagree with the way that we test people, I wholeheartedly disagree with it. But that's not what I'm looking at in this. But you're preparing to go into this next stage that's even more grown up, which is where you'll take even more responsibility, where you'll start working towards something. Your GCSEs that you start doing when you're sort of 14 years old, and you do the actual tests. The end results come when you're 16 years old. So it's the first time in your life that you're really doing something where there is a major plan of the fact for the next 2 years you are expected to learn this. You're able to make some choices, but they're still restricted choices, and there's still expectations of you, and there's still a lot of input from your teachers. And if you've ever watched any of the Educating Yorkshire, Educating Essex sort of programs, you'll see that there is a lot of emphasis on teachers spending a lot of time trying to help both groups of people and individual people do the best they possibly can in their GCSEs, and a lot of keeping them on track. And we're talking about people here who by a big margins are people who are neurotypical. So therefore, they're showing that a neurotypical person needs a lot more guidance at that age to keep going at something that's going to be potentially happening in 2 years' time. So we're at 16 years old, and there's still a lot of emphasis on the fact that this person needs a lot of help and a lot of guidance to do something that is beneficial to them, and therefore is a child. We're talking 16 is double the age of what this person was. This person's referring to when they say 8-year-old nephew. And I know a lot of people have had 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 9-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever age it is, it doesn't matter. But then if you even go on to going to age 17 to 18, that's when you do things like A-level and college. And there's still input, and still, this is the time when it's like, it's your choice to do this, but we are still going to guide you through this. There's a lot of guidance, a lot of support, and a lot of help. And when I look back at how I was when I was 18 years old, me as a person, I am so different. That's 20 years ago. I am a different person today than I was then. My life has changed considerably. I do things that I would never thought that I would do. I don't do things that I thought I would be doing. My life isn't what I expected it to be at that. And I was so immature at 18 in comparison to where I am now. My thought processes were completely different. So I'd be insulted, not to the same extent as an 8-year-old, but I'd be insulted if somebody said you don't act like my 18-year-old, because I wouldn't expect you to, and neither would you. And it just makes no sense whatsoever that you would expect me to act like an 8-year-old or an 18-year-old. I do have issues with the way that the education system is, and I certainly do in relation to how it is for people who are not neurotypical, and I am going to get into that a little bit later, specifically talking about a situation that really, really frustrates me, that is in relation to people saying because they work in a certain environment, that means that they have some sort of insight into things, how an autistic person's feeling, or that they have some magical power to be able to tell whether somebody's autistic or not because of the fact that they work with a limited group of people who are autistic in a very specific setting. And I would say quite often not necessarily identifying people who are autistic all the time. Anyway, we'll get to that later. So what I'm going to have a look at now is the legal system, and this is where the 10-year, I think the 10-year age is important for school, but it's even more important when it comes to the legal system. So let's have a look from the perspective of the UK in relation to the legal system. So it'll become apparent quite quickly into this why I used 10 as an age rather than 8. And one is because it's higher than the age of the person that said the 8-year-old nephew to me, but it's also because of this. So in the UK, when you're under 10 years old, there is no assumed legal culpability. So basically, it's assumed that you are not automatically culpable for your actions under the age of 10. If you were 9 years old and committed a crime, it would be seen that there was no automatic culpability. There would be a lot of work into working out what happened there and what do you do with that person, how do you deal with that situation, and it's dealt with very, very differently, and usually not actually through the legal system. It's more through the social services side of things. The legal system will probably be involved because of the fact you've broken the law, but it won't be the main people that deal with it. So if you then look further into it, so between the ages of 10 and 12, there's very limited culpability. So you have culpability, and we have prosecuted people in this country for let's say murder at the age of 10. We've had a situation where that happened. But they've had a much more restricted sentence that has a minimum term that's much less. It's not it's not actually a life sentence. You can't give a life sentence to anybody under the age of 18 in this country, but there's very limited culpability. And usually if it isn't a crime that is hugely, really, really serious, it's only really very serious crimes that would have any kind of custodial sentence. And that custodial sentence would obviously be in a juvenile facility, and it would be very different because you would have such limited culpability. And then again at 13, so that's very limited culpability, and the way it's described is also then it's that between 13 and 15 you have limited culpability, so you are still culpable, but there are going to be automatic mitigating circumstances due to age, which will lower down any sentence that you have. 15 to 16, it's more of a sort of limited mitigated culpability. So depending on the crime, then you look at it, you can end up getting much longer sentences once you get to this age, and have bigger minimum sentences for things like murder. But there's still limited culpability, and at 17 to 18 there's mitigated culpability. So it'll be looking, if you're 17, 18 years old, you're kind of seen as somebody who can have much harsher sentences, very long sentences. We've just given somebody a sentence of 52 years here, which is a lot of years. I'm not getting into the ins and outs of whether I agree with that or not. My point here is that the legal system looks at culpability for committing a crime from the age of 10 to the age of 18, that there's lots of mitigations. So again, then referring to me not being, or an autistic person not being like an 8-year-old, you're saying that that then absolves us of any culpability for any of our actions then, because if you're expecting me to act like an 8-year-old, then I would have the culpability of an 8-year-old. And it's just wrong. It just makes no sense whatsoever but you wouldn't say that I had no culpability, yet you're saying I should act like somebody who doesn't have culpability. That makes no sense whatsoever. I don't want to not have culpability. I want culpability in my life. I want to be culpable for my actions, and I believe that I should be. So, but if you're saying I'm like an 8-year-old, then, or I should be like an 8-year-old, then that means that there's no culpability for me then. Is that what we're saying in that situation? And I think the reason why I went down this rabbit hole is because of how stupid the whole process is. So the thing that, like I said earlier, there's the people that are my age, when I'm referred to as an autistic person, that I am compared to another autistic person. So I'm not I'm not the same as any other human being on this planet, whether they are autistic or they are holistic. So why would someone else being autistic mean they would know if another person was? You may be more in tune to be able to pick up on it if you're autistic, but it doesn't necessarily mean you would know. And saying that, and then knowing somebody who is autistic, who's the same age as me, doesn't mean that that person is in any way, shape or form going to be like me. Their life experience is going to be completely different. It's like saying, you are not like my Uncle Bob, so therefore you can't be an uncle. So it's just offensive. It would just be offensive to say you can't be an uncle because you're not the same uncle as what my Uncle Bob's like. That every uncle's different. It just is so ridiculous to even think about saying that to somebody. Why does it seem to be okay to say it? You wouldn't say it in any other respect. There is no other place in society where it would be acceptable to say, I think you're like, there is something about you that is similar, therefore I'm going to just pile you into that. And it is discrimination, and it's microaggression. It's really, really offensive. And I sort of alluded to this earlier. So people say it doesn't hold much water with me if people say that I work for the NHS, therefore I can pick up on the fact that people are autistic. No, you can't. Unless you're somebody who specialises in autism, it doesn't mean that just because you work in the NHS. And I've had this. I've seen people say it. And it's usually I work with people who are autistic, but within the setting of the NHS, giving people care, like a GP saying it, for instance. It's like you may be able to see signs of the fact that somebody's autistic, but you are not accounting for a plethora of things that a specialist, somebody who is diagnosing autism, would be looking for, that include things like masking. That you're not. Why would you know about that? And also, when you're having an assessment for autism, you tend to try and let your mask down. So you can't know. You can't know. It is impossible for you to know. And saying it is offensive, and using this position of power that you think you have from working in the NHS is an abuse of that power, in my view. It's the same in any kind of situation when it comes to sort of care in the community, that kind of thing. That it's like, yes, you may be able to pick up on signs of the fact somebody is autistic because of the fact that you will have had training to deal with people in a situation that you work in, that an autistic person might react in a certain way, or that you may have to treat an autistic person differently to the way that you would treat somebody who was neurotypical. That doesn't mean that you can identify everybody that's autistic. And again, I come back to the point of that does not account for masking. It really does not account for camouflaging your behaviours, which many people do, regardless of whether you were diagnosed when you were younger or you were late diagnosed. When it comes to the education system, I think the education system fails autistic people all the time. I think they are terrible at picking up on it. I think they really don't want people to go for an assessment. I think that the bar that CAMS set is really high to even start looking at it. And CAMS is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services in the UK, so they deal with people that are young adults and children from a mental health perspective. And I think schools are very active in not wanting it to be the case that there are more people being diagnosed. I think it worries them. And then from an education system as well, if you only have to watch my video that I did on the private special education needs video, that I really don't think that again, that holds much water in relation to how the world is in relation to autistic people, because the education system's getting it wrong. And yeah, it's just, I feel like in this video that, one, I'm ranting and I'm going all over the place. And I think it's because I've held so much information in my head. I've been overthinking, I've been hyper-focusing on it because of how frustrating it is. And I think it's that understanding of the fact that society is not made for autistic people, so we have to work harder to live in it. And we're often judged because we are not seen as fully functioning humans, let alone an adult human. So we kind of can't win. It's like, you want us to function in society, and we want to function in society, but the minute we do function in society, you're saying that we're functioning too well, to the point where, well, you don't need a diagnosis anymore. And it's like, but that the diagnosis is what is making me able to function better, and me understanding it is allowing me to function better in the world, and to account for my own needs. And for some reason, that seems to be offensive to you. No other person's experience should be used to invalidate another's experience. I would never dream of saying someone is faking autism. There is no benefit to doing so, in my view. So I can assure you there is no benefit in faking being autistic. There really isn't. It doesn't do anybody any favours that I can see that would be beneficial to people, apart from the fact that maybe they would be able to fake being able to get maybe some support. But that support is available to people who are not autistic. Any accommodations that I have at work, most of them can just be put in place. It's not outlandish to ask for the things that I ask for. So, and apart from then potentially, I don't know, maybe use it to be able to gain disability benefit, but I don't think anybody would do that. It'd be much easier to fake a back problem. If you're looking at it to do that, you get more from it, and it makes no sense. And if somebody it might be that somebody thinks they are, and they've been misguided to think that they're autistic when they're not, but that is misguiding. And I think to say that you question everybody when they say that they're autistic, and say insulting things towards them, and imply that they're children or should act like children, which is offensive to the child and to the adult, by the way, because it's saying that you're expecting an autistic child to act a certain way, and you're expecting an autistic adult to act like a child. So it's everybody's offensive in that. It's all offensive, no matter what. But I just don't see I don't see what the benefits are. I don't see, when you have to fight so hard for everything in life as an autistic person, I don't see what the benefits of it would be. But even if people are getting benefits from it, is it really hurting you? And it's not taking away resources from anybody. So it's just frustrating. It's as if you think that people think there's this finite amount of resource, and you can't, and it isn't really. It's like if I was going to the GP, I could book a GP's appointment for anything. I don't get one quicker because of the fact that I'm autistic. It makes no difference. I have the same amount of time. If I have to book a second appointment with them, I don't actually get that second appointment ever. When I've actually done it, I've never actually got longer than I'm supposed to. So it doesn't actually happen. And it's like, I don't see what the benefit is. I literally cannot see what the benefit of it is. So saying people are, and then referring to them in an offensive way, is just, in my view, ridiculous. And there may be a very small amount of people that, and I'm talking minute amounts of people that may be, but I have to look at it from, if somebody is willing to lie or to change their reality so that they can say that they're autistic, they'd have to go to great lengths to do it, because they've got to do a lot of pretending to a lot of people, because it's not like you just get a diagnosis. There are other people involved in your diagnosis. There's multiple people who go through the assessment process with you. They speak to your family, they speak to people around you, so you've got to have fooled a lot of people to do that. So when it comes down to it, it really does come down to the fact that, one, it is ridiculous, and two, it is offensive. You would not say this to an holistic person, to a person that is not autistic. Likening a 38-year-old grown-ass man to an 8-year-old boy is offensive. It infantilizes autistic people, and it invalidates autistic people's experience. It's just so offensive. Saying to an holistic person, you are acting like my 8-year-old nephew, would offend them. It would be taken as you saying that the person is acting immature. So why put that comparison on me as an autistic person, but make it sound like it's a bad thing that I don't act like an 8-year-old, yet it's used as an offensive term to say to somebody, you're being immature, you're behaving inappropriately, you're behaving in a way I wouldn't expect an adult to act. So why are you saying that? Do you flip it the other way around to invalidate my experience? It just shows that it is discriminatory. It is absolutely discriminatory. I don't want to act like I was when I was 8 years old, just as much as I don't want to act like the person I was when I was 18 years old. Like I pointed out earlier, I've changed mostly for the better since then. So no matter the age of the autistic children you were referring to, I don't want to be like them, not because they are autistic, but because they are a child. They are not my age. I want to act my age. You wouldn't say it to other human beings. You are not like me, so therefore you are not a human being. Just really let that sink in, because when I wrote that down, I was like, that was really like, that is kind of, it's not the same thing, but it could be. You know, this is what it leads to when people say things like that. It is microaggression. It's discriminatory. It is absolutely discriminatory to say to somebody, you're not acting like my 8-year-old, therefore my 8-year-old nephew that's autistic, therefore you can't be autistic. It's so offensive, and you would not use it in any other way. And it does feel like mini attacks that you kind of, especially when you already suffer so much with thinking that you're just constantly questioning your life all the time, questioning everything you do, questioning all things. And it's like, it shows you, one, that people don't get it, and two, how much it can have a major impact on somebody that's already struggling with social implications of that, if they're just being alive. And then this is the response. I do wonder if it is cognitive dissonance. Holding two viewpoints in your head can be difficult. Change can be hard, and trying to change a thought process can be really difficult. You know, as an autistic person, you're very aware of that. But I'm just... If I would change a thought process if I knew that thought process was hurting other people, and vocalizing something like this is hurtful. It's hurtful, and if I know that I'm hurting somebody, I will stop myself from doing it. So why do you think that's acceptable? It must be one of two things. To do it, you're not making the link of how ridiculous it is to say that and how hurtful it would be to the other person, or you don't care that it hurts the other person. Whichever one it is, if this is the thought process that people are going through, they really need to change it. And I suppose just a last point on this very ranty video that I feel like I've gone everywhere with, but I've kind of had to just get this out because it's made me realise how many times these things are said, and I've heard it, I've had it said to me, but I've also seen it a lot with other people getting these kind of comments and that kind of thing. But I just wanted to talk about fake diagnosis. As I said, I just can't see the fact that people are faking a diagnosis. Why? What would be the benefit? Further than understanding yourself, because that's the only thing I've got from my diagnosis, is me understanding me better and me being able to allow myself to be myself more. It has no... I think it would be so hugely rare for anybody to do this. There's got to be a bigger reason why somebody would do it. If somebody is faking a diagnosis, there has to be a bigger reason, and I would say something that's more concerning than being autistic. So why is it such a problem? I'm not, as an autistic person, bothered by it, and I know most autistic people kind of aren't that bothered about what other people do. It's when it's harmful. Obviously there are issues there when people are purposely making it so that they're adding into this narrative. But the problem is, how would you identify that, and why should you identify it? And identifying it would mean treating a lot of autistic people badly. My biggest fear is that people who are self-identifying will be scared of seeking a diagnosis because of these ridiculous stereotypes, and people calling people fakers, saying people are faking it. It's going to make people scared of first self-identifying, which especially for late diagnosed people, that you have to go through self-identification first. You have to go through self-identification for you to be able to even consider going to go and have an assessment. Otherwise, why would you have an assessment? And that journey can be really long. The journey I went through to realise was an 18-month to 2-year journey that was just to get to a point of me being comfortable self-identifying that way, that I thought of myself as autistic or potentially autistic. It was a further 18 months before I felt I should take the resources to go for a diagnosis, because I needed that clarity. I needed it to clarify for me, no one else, but I did want to share it with other people. I share my experience because I found the thing I was searching for, and was just out, and it was just out of my reach for 37 years at that point. And through YouTube, I did that through YouTube. I did it through YouTube videos. That's where it started, and that's when I started then researching outside of it and thinking about it and thinking possibly there were many creators that I looked at, and that's where I started piecing everything together. And I knew that I wanted to help other people do that, and that was the whole purpose of me doing YouTube. So, and I'm sure that's what most other autistic creators do, especially when they do this kind of content. So it's not just for people like me, but it wasn't just people like me as well. It was people that spoke about their experience in a way I was able to see my life and how it had affected me individually. And I wanted to be able to sort of give that back and be, and it helps me, this helps me be able to do this. This is a very ranty video, but it has helped me being able to talk about it, because I can talk to my mum about it, I can talk to my housemate about it, I can talk to my friends about it, but it's not the same as me just getting it all out, and I feel like I'm constantly talking to them about these kind of things, whereas this allows me to sort of put it out there, and hopefully people will look at it and see, we shouldn't be saying this, and we shouldn't be the one thing that really disturbs me and really upsets me is when autistic people say to other autistic people, I'm autistic and therefore I don't think you are because you don't present in the same way as me. I think that gives people a lot of power that are trying to make autistic people feel like they're not valid, and I think it's unintentional. I understand it. I understand when you look at somebody else and they're saying they identify the same as you and you don't see it the same. I can see why you would feel that way, and there are autistic people that I see that I have very little in common with that person, but their experiences, they are quite similar, but they're not the same, and they experience the world differently. And I can't understand. I couldn't understand how somebody could be a big superstar, because it would drive me insane, and the workload would be too much. And when I look at people with massive workloads that seem to be able to deal with it, but I don't know what's going on internally with them, that doesn't mean that I can't that I can in some way turn around to them and say, you're not autistic there because you're doing well. And that again is kind of like, it feels like, are we supposed to just disappear into the background then, and we're only supposed to act in a certain way that makes you feel comfortable about me being autistic, but it makes you uncomfortable to think that I am autistic because I'm like you, or maybe that's part of it. And I've only just really thought about that. I've thought about this for a whole week, and that's only just really popped into my head. Is it that somebody doesn't, if they are identifying some behaviours, that they're picking certain behaviours out that they think are autistic, and they're quite far away from the way they are as a person, and therefore that makes them comfortable. Then if they're identifying something in that person that's similar to them, and they're like, well, I'm not autistic, but obviously that doesn't mean that they are, as much as it doesn't mean I'm not. And I think that this comes from a complete lack of understanding of autism, and the fact it is massively infantilized, and it's looked at as a children's condition, and it obviously develops with the human being that has it, and it therefore will develop relative to that human being's experience, and that means it's very individualistic anyway. But as you get older, it becomes even more. With every experience you have, we all change as human beings, whether we're human beings, with every experience that we have. So the same happens whether you're autistic or you're not autistic. You change, and therefore your experiences are definitely not going to be the same as somebody who's 8 years old. That's kind of my point. As I've said, this has been a ranty video, and I could probably rant on for ages about it. And I feel like when I look back on this video, it's kind of going to be a bit of a nightmare because I think I've gone all over the place. But I kind of want to get it out there, and hopefully people, when they see it, they'll see that yes, it is a bit ranty. But I'm hoping I've made some points, and I'd love to hear people's views on it. As always, if you can comment and let me know what you think about this. Do you experience it? What are your thoughts on this? And do you see it from the same perspective, or do you not really care? But I'd love to hear that. And if anybody is thinking of turning around to somebody and saying my 8-year-old nephew is autistic and that it doesn't act like you, know that it will upset that autistic person. It will be offensive to the autistic person. It's not very nice to your child because you're putting a lot of expectation on them, and it's just invalidating that person. And there is no valid reason to say that to somebody at all. There is never a valid reason to say that. Saying my 8-year-old nephew is autistic and I'd like to talk to you about autism so that I can understand it more, great. Saying that you're not like him in a way that is saying it that therefore you're not, and that is how this was said to me. It was, yeah, you're not like him, therefore are you sure, was what they said, which I know isn't saying directly you are, but it's still there. It's still very much a are you sure, because I don't believe you. So that's, like I say, that's this video done. I am sorry about the rantiness of it. I hope it isn't too bad. So I'm going to be doing my videos hopefully again more regularly. Again, this week's just been a nightmare for me. Like I say, I've gone through a massive imposter syndrome situation and been hyper focusing on various different things and just trying to deal with a lot. So I've not been able to do it. So I will be doing my other videos as I've been doing previously. As always, if you can comment, like I say, that'd be great. If not, then don't. What? You can tell my head's all over the place with this. So yeah, if you'd like to comment, great. That'd be fantastic. If you could subscribe, share, like, do any of the algorithm things, the things that make the algorithm happy, I would be very much appreciated. But don't worry too much about it. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks. Bye.